Hey guys, it's Jeffrey.
And I'm John.
And together,
We're the Cross-Eyed Guys.
So yeah, why don't you tell them we're continuing our series on our statement of faith. Why don't you go and tell them which one we're on now?
Yeah, so today we're going to jump right on into the fall of man. We're probably going to hit this one pretty straightforward, and we'll talk a little bit about the serpent's deception, and we'll talk about some divine intervention and just the consequences of sin and all the stuff and everything in between. So it's going to be a pretty good episode. I'm kind of excited about this because we'll get to come out publicly and blame women for all the problems of the world.
Sure. If you want to go that route, you go right ahead.
Yeah, don't let don't let my wife watch this episode. My wife will be really upset with that. However, it's funny because I'm just joking.
Right.
Hopefully everybody understands that I'm just kidding. But the only reason I'm even joking about that is because there have actually been pastors who have made those types of statements.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, if Eve didn't, then we wouldn't, and they wouldn't, and Adam, it's just funny to me. Yeah, but anyway, doggone it, ladies.
You know why woman is called woman?
Because
Adam saw Eve naked for the first time and said, "Whoa, man."
Yeah. Well, I've always heard also another way of that. Why is it called women or woman? Because all the men kept going into the female bathroom, so they had to put a sign on the door that said, "Whoa, men."
Very timely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It's 2025.
Right.
You can do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about sin in the world. Dear Joseph. By the way, this has nothing to do with it, but you know people use the Lord's name in vain in public, or just whatever in general.
Mm-hmm.
They'll use the JC, and it's I have, it may not be bragging rights, it might be bad or negative on my part, but I have decided that I will never do that. I decided that a long time ago, which is a good thing, but I have also decided that I am comfortable using other people's God's name in vain. So you will hear me periodically make a comment like, "Joseph Smith, what's wrong with you?"
Joseph H. Smith.
So anyway, just funny. Anyway, okay, let's jump to topic here. The fall of man.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
All right, the fall. From our statement of faith, we believe that through one man, Adam, sin entered the world, bringing death and separation from God. All people have sinned and are under condemnation of death. So, last episode we did establish that we take the creation account literally. So, Adam was a real person who really sinned. And so, just starting off, the serpent's described as more cunning than any other beast the Lord God had made. Yeah. And reading it just now, I thought later on in Scripture it tells us to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves.
Yeah.
I mean, just there's a parallel. It's kind of where it's you could say it's referencing creation later on. So Adam and Eve are given a perfect world.
Mm-hmm.
They've never sinned. There's not even the ability really to think to sin.
Yeah.
And that's not even really like a physical thing. There's no reason for it to enter the head.
Yeah.
Enter the mind. So they had perfect world. They had everything except for this one thing that they couldn't do.
Yeah.
And without the snake, without temptation, it was just automatic. They didn't do it. They didn't even really look at the tree.
Yeah.
And so that's when we get the serpent, which, in Revelation we all know as the devil.
Mm-hmm.
He's from the beginning, this deceiver from the beginning. And he speaks to Eve.
Because he's a deceiver.
He is the deceiver. Has God indeed said, "You shall not eat of every tree in the garden"? And Eve says, "Well, no, we have every tree in the garden except for this one."
Yeah.
And she goes over exactly what God told them, that if we eat of it or even touch it, we'll surely die. And the serpent says, you won't die. And it's kind of interesting here. You can argue that the serpent is presenting it too literally in this case.
Yeah, yeah.
God did not mean, you eat that fruit and boom, you're just drop dead.
Yeah.
It didn't mean that as a spiritual death. When they ate that fruit, that was that separation from God, between them and God.
Right.
And he says, you won't surely die. God knows that you'll become like God, knowing both good and evil. And you ever heard the term ignorance is bliss?
Yeah.
It's really true. This isn't God trying to keep man from learning. It's keeping them innocent.
Yeah. It's like what we do with our children. Raising kids. There's just some things that we protect our kids from. We don't want them to be involved in certain things too early. So stay away from politics for a moment. But you go to like a driver's license. Kids don't get driver's license until they're 15 and a half, 16 years old. Well, the reason for that is if you give a driver's license to a 10-year-old, it's going to create issues. So it's not the Lord saying, hey, I don't ever want you to experience life or do whatever, like I'm going to hold this one thing back from you. It's God going, you know what, you can't handle that. Let's not give that to you. Let's keep that away from you. It's a protection thing. It's a good parenting method that God is using in this moment, is what it reminds me of.
Well, think about all the things we ultimately would not need to know had it not been for the fall. We wouldn't need to know how to clothe ourselves, how to protect ourselves against elements.
Yeah.
The elements. When sin entered the world, it affected creation on a fundamental level.
Yeah.
Bad weather, pestilence, disease, death. We spent since then we spent all of history trying to avoid all that, trying to combat that, and had we not sinned, we wouldn't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
And
it'd be weird.
It would be weird. And Satan here, he says, you'll be like God. And Eve hears that. Well, yeah, I want to be like God.
Yeah.
Which, here you've got, pastors today teaching a little God's doctrine that we become little gods when we put our faith in Jesus. And this is Kenneth Copeland, Jesse Duplantis, Creflo Dollar, what's her face? Joyce Meyer. So many of them, and they teach this little God's doctrine, and it's literally a doctrine of demons. They're preaching original sin.
Yeah. We will never become a god, little, big, medium, in between.
Right. There's no little g gods.
Yeah, not at all.
And they're preaching original sin, and side note, Mormons believe we become gods, and we go off when we die. We go off and start creating our own worlds.
Yeah.
It's weird and not biblical at all.
I kind of like that idea. I definitely would like to just create my own little world and go live in my own bubble. I could be completely content, completely fine if I lived out in the woods somewhere with like one, maybe two people, and had my own little bubble. Maybe I need to be more. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, keep going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. The serpent says you'll become like God, knowing both good and evil. And we know what evil is. We've experienced evil, and it would be easy to think that, why would Eve want to know evil? Well, I think from her perspective, she didn't know what evil was. So it's like, evil, what's that? I want to know about it.
Yeah.
And somehow, at some point, God's command to not eat of the tree, to not touch the tree, just poof, gone.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying earlier, that sin wouldn't even have been a thought process. Okay, so prior, like it all comes full circle, right? Like when we die and we go to heaven, we experience unbroken communion, unbroken relationship with God the Father. And in that moment, when we experience that, when we get to heaven, we are released from the sin nature of man. That's where like terms of like perfection come into play
Mm-hmm.
in Scripture, where we come to a place of being separated from the sin nature. Well, prior to the sin actually taking place in the Garden of Eden, Eve and Adam were separated from the sin nature.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't there. So, for her to even have a thought process or a perception that, oh, maybe I want to try that, wouldn't have come from any perspective of doing something ill natured towards God or sinful towards God. It would have been, it seemingly would have been something that comes from the perspective to, or the desire to want to please God or be like God.
Mm-hmm.
So Eve wouldn't have done anything going, well, I think I want to know sin. She would have done something going, I think I want to be like God.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, just in my brain, that's just logically how I see that.
Mm-hmm.
And so having not had sin before, she wouldn't have thought to herself, like you're saying, that there's a consequence. She wouldn't have understood what it really meant to see evil.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been no way for her to see it. She lived in, the perfect place, the perfect world, She was in the Garden of Eden where things are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't even killing animals yet.
Nope.
Like, they weren't even eating meat.
Mm.
Everything was just perfect. And so, for Satan or for, the serpent to deceive her, it was probably a pretty tough pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he had to know Scripture to a point where he could twist it.
Right.
Like it wasn't just like a head knowledge base. Like
Mm-hmm.
he had to know Scripture to a place where he could convince her, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what the Lord wants for you.
Right.
Yeah, that's just my perspective.
Knowing Scripture before it was written, because he'd known what had happened up to that point.
Yeah.
What had gone on, and we talk about Eve not knowing that what the consequences would be, but at the same token, that doesn't absolve her from those consequences.
Right.
Adam and Eve still had the command, don't even look at the tree.
Yeah.
And not even looking at the tree she does, she sees that's good for food, pleasant to the eye, desirable to make one wise. And so there's a physical, aesthetic, and an intellectual appeal to it. And she concentrated on having all these things, all these trees that she could eat from. She concentrated on the one thing she could.
Right.
And ignored everything
else. Yeah. And then she takes it to Adam.
Right, she takes it to Adam. And Adam wasn't too far away, really. Because Adam was with his wife. She gave him the fruit, and he ate. And without really hesitation. And so, boom, there you have it. We have sin into the world. Because you fast forward a little bit to Cain and Abel. Here, you see the difference. Here you have Satan tempting Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Eve. There, you have Cain coming up with it on his own.
Yeah.
Sin is there. Temptation is there. Vodi Bakum says, we're not creatures that would, otherwise behave if the devil would just leave us alone.
Right.
We do not need the devil to sin.
No, we don't need help at all. We get ourselves in enough trouble all by ourselves. I mean, we don't need help. Ask my wife. I don't need help to get in trouble.
Yeah, that's I'll do a quick shout out to Vodi Bakum and a little bit of a plug for him. Look up his sermon, the world, the flesh, and the devil. It's really good.
Yeah. I like Vodi.
I like Vodi too. So you wonder if they hadn't even paid any attention to that tree at all up to this point. And I mean that's all it took. So because when you think about sin in this world, we like to compare our sin to other people's sin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that bad. I don't murder people.
Yeah.
I don't touch children inappropriately. But it's not our sin compared to others. It's our sin compared to a perfect God. We sin against the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
The one who gave us everything. And we had the audacity to say, you know what, that's not enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Because
so,
a loose term. I don't really like this term, but I get it.
mhm,
The term of sin is sin.
mhm,
I don't really like that sin because there are sins that lead to death according to Scripture, and there are sins that don't.
mhm,
And so sin is sin, yes, and the fact that sin is what separates us from God. But I think that the problem is when we try to somehow justify our sin based on other people's sin, like you're talking about.
mhm,
And when we do that, we forget what you're saying here is that you know our sin is measured by a holy God who
mhm,
does not sin, who is perfect. you know so when you take that measuring stick and it's up here based on a holy God and we're down here, it's not apples to apples,
no,
not at all.
mhm,
But whenever you bring that level to person to person,
mhm,
okay, well, like, yeah, I didn't kill anybody,
right,
but did you die?
mhm,
That makes sense. That feels okay.
mhm,
It feels great right here because I'm not as bad as a lot of people.
mhm,
I'm not a drug addict. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a whatever. I'm not you know I might even be able to elevate myself a little bit here.
mhm,
Uh, but then now I'm sinning again.
right,
Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to.
mhm,
Uh, so yeah. I mean, I totally get that conversation. And then the other side of that was what I was thinking about a minute ago was you know Adam and Eve. Have you ever heard people say something like, "Well, Adam should have just not ate, don't eat the apple, don't partake, and just throw her under the bus and turn her over to God. And then
mhm.
God could have killed her, or Adam could have killed her and made him take another rib." You ever heard anybody say that
I,
before?
no, I haven't actually.
Yeah, dude, I've been hearing it a lot lately.
Hmm.
I watch the Book Face all the time.
Hmm.
So they got all the reels that come up, and I don't know what theology this is coming out of, but there's this conversation that's taking place where people are like, well, Adam should have walked away. Adam knew better. He didn't have to take of the fruit. His wife came over and offered him the fruit. He takes it. He should have walked away. It's Adam's fault. Whatever. Uh, and that's just silly to me because God created Adam and Eve to be one. Essentially they're married.
Mhm.
Like her sins are my sins. Essentially they're one in this picture. So Adam doesn't get the ability or the freedom to just separate himself from his wife and go, "Yep, nope, don't want anything to do with that."
Mhm.
Because that's the same thing that many Americans are doing right now. Many people around the world, whenever their wife does something they don't like or their husband does something they don't like, oh well, we'll just get divorced. Like that wasn't a thing for Adam.
Mhm.
Adam's like, yep, she ate it, I ate it, we're in this together.
Mhm.
So I don't. It was a weird thing to hear. Where people were just, oh, Adam could have got rid of Eve.
Mhm.
Sure, he could have, if he wasn't in it for life.
Right. Mhm. Sin enters the world, and the immediate reaction is Adam and Eve notice they're naked.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there would have been no need for clothing.
Yeah.
If they hadn't sinned, and so there's like an exposure that they've never felt before.
Yeah.
And
The shame of it.
right, the shame of it. They pretty quickly picked up on the talent of sewing, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
put fig leaves together and covered themselves up. And and then they hear, and even that, ultimately isn't enough in their mind because they hear God walking in the garden, and they still hide even after they covered themselves.
Yeah.
And
Do they have duct tape? I bet they use Gorilla Tape. That's how they made them fig leaves.
if they can't, what they say, if you can't fix it, duck
Duck
it.
it. Yeah.
And so, God calls out to them, and God knew where they were.
Yeah, he didn't
wasn't
call out to them
ignorant.
because, not because they were lost
Right.
or he didn't know.
It was for accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you? Come out here and tell me what you've done.
Yeah.
And that's what they Adam says because we are naked, and he's like, who told you were naked? And this is Adam sort of blames his wife, but also takes blame.
Yeah.
Adam, Eve took the fruit, she ate it, she gave it to me, I ate it too. And first instance of the blame game.
Yeah.
Because it's never entirely our fault.
You see, you go back to that conversation where God's like, "Where are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the fact that God didn't know where Adam and Eve were at. It was that accountability, component. Having kids, like I like having kids because you get a lot of information to be able to share with other people. Sometimes it's testimonial. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, kids are ding dongs.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when our kids do something wrong, they'll run and they'll hide.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you went to your room. I have no idea where you are. Like, oh, you're really hiding from me today. You open up the bedroom door and you're like, come out, wherever you are. Ollie, Oxenfree. And you open up the door and they're not standing there or sitting on their bed, and it's like, oh, I wonder where the kids are at.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're not in the closet. Oh, they must be under the bed. And I would imagine that that's kind of similar to where God was at. Like he knows where they're at.
Right.
He's walked the garden. He created the garden.
Mm-hmm.
He knows where they are. He knows where the hiding spots are. There's no way that they're going to just go and hide from the Creator of all creation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'll hide in this corner over here. God will never see me.
Right.
They didn't have camo yet.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they thought they'd blend in with the leaves.
Yeah. Their pale skin
and you talk about kids, and kids are a lesson in the truth of the Bible, and that you don't have to teach kids to lie.
No.
They will just do it. They'll start doing it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
You can be the most honest parents to have ever walked the earth, and your children are going to lie to you.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
At an early age.
At an early age. I mean, as soon as they figure out there's trouble,
mm-hmm.
And consequences for that, they will come up with a lie. They will find a way to get out of it. They will stretch the truth. They, anything that they can do, they will do it.
And usually lies come with a story.
Yeah, there's always a story. And my kids got it bad.
Let me explain.
Yeah, my kids can't lie. They do. They're kids. They do.
They're just not very good at it.
Well, not only are they not good at it, but we have cameras in our house.
Mm.
So like, you're not going to get in a fight with one another and then say, "Well, I didn't do anything."
Mm-hmm.
Really? Let me look. Okay, I already know what you did.
Right.
We got the all-seeing eye in the living room.
Eye or sound.
Yeah. Like you don't get to just lie about it. It's no longer me. We live in an age where it's no longer parents trying to figure out what kids actually do and trying to find the truth between two stories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get the ability to just go back and go, oh, no, this is what happened. Actually, you're the one that lied, and you're the one that's innocent. It's just a funny thing.
That made me think of something I heard a pastor say, is when you're in trouble, you want mercy. When your brother's in trouble, you want justice.
Yeah. I saw a video not too long ago. There was a kid that his siblings were beating up on him, and the dad says, "Well, what should I do to this sibling?" And it's the older one, and the kid goes, "Show mercy." And then he says, "Okay, what should I do to this kid?" And it's the one that's closer in age, and he goes, "You should beat him." They both did the exact same thing, but show mercy to the older kid that you like,
right,
and beat the other kid that's more your age. So yeah, it's just funny. It's funny how kids are.
Mm-hmm. So God turns to the serpent first. Once everything's laid out and what happens, has come to light. God starts pronouncing judgment, the consequences, And in, did I say 17? I meant 15. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. When I was doing some of the study for this, I came to a word that I'd never heard before. I had to look up the definition of, but it is proto-evangelism. Proto-evangelism. Protoevangelism. And basically what that means is just the first time, I'll just read it. The first announcement of the gospel. This is the very first ever Messianic prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
This is talking about Jesus. The crucifixion is the bruising of the heel, and the victory over death is the crushing of the head.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. It's like, again, the Genesis is the foundation for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
The including sin and the solution to sin.
Yeah. And so we're given this idea immediately early on, that lays out the entire story for what the gospel really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's immediate in Genesis, from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
We're going from, the creation to the fall of man to redemption, forgiveness of sin, and eternal life in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And so after the serpent, God turns to Eve, and it says, well, actually, let's stick on the serpent, for a second longer. So, cursed above all animals, he
Mm-hmm.
shall crawl on its belly and eat dust. And nobody knows what exactly that looks like. So you wonder, did snakes were they more like lizards at one point? Did they have?
Yeah.
Nobody knows. It's just we won't know on this side of heaven. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's a mystery that's just really interesting.
Or was it just that one
Just the
particular animal?
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Was it just that animal,
Mm-hmm.
that serpent in that
moment?
In that moment was cursed
Mm-hmm.
with those physical features.
I hadn't thought about that. It's a good question. So now then he turns to Eve, and he says, "I'll increase your pain in childbearing," which means obviously we know the proliferation of the human race wasn't a result of sin. That was going to happen, but now it is going to be painful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I'm surprised Eve doesn't get more flack from women for that. For
Yeah,
that reason.
yeah. No, they stick together, man.
Desire will be for your husband; he'll rule over you. So there's more of a struggle within that hierarchy now.
Yeah. And in the Christian world, it's really interesting to me how this hierarchy has been put into place, and Christian women have gotten to a place where they seem to be pretty comfortable with the way that God's laid it out. They are submissive to husbands, and I mean in a biblical sense. I don't mean whatever nonsense people are out there teaching that doesn't make sense to the Bible. But like my wife, for example, she views and sees me as the spiritual head of our home.
Mm-hmm.
So she is submissive to that.
Mm-hmm.
No, she's not submissive to me. Like if I tell her, hey, we're eating this for dinner tonight, she's like, well,
all right,
you cook.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about biblical submissiveness in the hierarchy of the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me that there are still women who are capable of doing that, and it started back with Eve, but then there's also the other extreme side of things. And I say extreme because there is in between, but the other extreme side of things where there's this whole women's right activists and
Mm-hmm.
He-Man Woman Hater Club, but the woman version of it, where men are bad and men are evil and
Mm-hmm.
men are they're all toxic and whatever. But that seems to seems like maybe that should have been earlier in life. I mean, toxic masculinity and this push to get away from man, because it was right at the beginning where God's like, you know what? there's a little struggle here,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it seems like that would have been an earlier thing, but it took many years before you started to really see a huge effect of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. It's just my thought, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, we see more of an effect on that today than we ever have. More of an attack on the relationship between a man and a woman than we've
Right.
ever seen it.
Well, it's there's two prongs to it. There's attack on biblical femininity
Yeah,
and an attack on biblical masculinity.
yeah,
To act like a man in really any form, whether it's wanting to hunt or just wanting to be manly and not feminine
yeah.
at all, is called toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
I don't want to get in touch with my feminine side because I do not have a feminine side.
No, you're a dude. You better not have a feminine side.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want my wife to have a masculine side.
No, me neither.
And it goes both ways. It's, she expects me to be a biblical man, and I expect her to be a biblical woman.
Yeah.
It's mutual.
Yeah.
And so then we go from that. God then turns to Adam because he's no less guilty.
Yeah.
So the ground will be cursed because of Adam. Work becomes toilsome. There's going to be more work than there would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
I believe that we would have had jobs in the garden. It says we work the garden, and I believe when we're on the other side of heaven, that we'll all have jobs.
Yeah, we'll have jobs in heaven.
Now there are jobs that we won't be needed. We're not going to need doctors. We're not going to need police officers.
Yeah.
But,
we're not going to need fire suppression systems.
Yeah.
And
that's a little to pivot back to the topic. Life becomes fraught with hardship and labor and eventually death. I'm certain that weeds that are most likely a result of the fall.
Yeah.
It's just things that work that would have probably been simply enjoyable. Being in the presence of God, being in this perfect place, is now no longer enjoyable because it's so much harder than it would have been.
Yeah.
For dust you are, and for dust you shall return. This is an introduction of physical death, and if we go back to our last episode on creation, the idea that the Earth is millions of years old, part of how that contradicts Scripture is it puts death before sin into the world.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that nothing died before sin entered the world.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And there was peace between man and animal, and between animal and animal.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that we did not eat. We didn't. We did not eat meat until Noah, after he came out of the ark.
Yeah.
So, all us meat eaters, we might have an awakening to vegetarianism when we're in heaven.
I rebuke you. There's going to be bacon in heaven.
Now, see, I'm looking forward to the new heaven and new earth, and having that. I assume this is why I believe that restored relationship between man and animal.
Yeah. So and it's interesting because people in the Bible days used to live a whole lot longer than we live, and you can talk about all the different things in the world that have changed between the beginning of time and now, and a lot of what's changed is dieting issues.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have chemicals. They weren't putting things in their food. They weren't putting things in their drink.
It wasn't processed food.
Nothing was processed. They only had the food that they needed for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they had an abundance, it was enough food for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to go out every day and work for it. They had to go out every day and get it. There were men who their job was to hunt, and as hunters, they did that every day. It wasn't like, well, we'll harvest this deer and then we'll, put it in the freezer and save it till next year.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a thing.
Or now actually drying the meat might have been a thing, but
drying it out, yeah. They just dry it out.
We have beef jerky that we like to eat, But back then, and still is today, it was a way of preserving the meat.
Yeah, yeah. And salt was used as a preservative,
Mm-hmm.
more than refrigeration and things like that.
Right.
Um, but they just didn't have the same things that we have today. So, it's likely that the reason that we, don't live as long is because of the way that we preserve things, because of, the technologies that we have, and we're not faced or forced to just live naturally
Mm-hmm.
anymore. We don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was watching a video, and this may be a little bit off topic, but it kind of applies. But I was watching a video of a guy. He was talking about how he goes all around the world. He gets to travel,
Mm-hmm.
and when he's in the U.S., he has a gluten allergy and he can't eat bread. It makes him really sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but if he goes to like China or other countries, he can eat bread. He can eat wheat, and it's completely fine. It doesn't make him sick. He doesn't have any allergies to it. But he comes home and he eats bread, and he has an allergy. And he's talking about how it's the stuff that we put in it that has really gotten out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of creating that. And it's I don't know if this is one man's story. This isn't
Right.
like I'm not giving you a factual. I'm giving you a man's experience.
Right.
But he's made the statement that it's the preservatives and the things that we put in the food here in America that are what people is actually allergic to,
Mm-hmm.
and they mask it with you're allergic to wheat, or you're allergic to
Right. They make it broad rather
rather than
specific.
And so I don't know. Maybe there's something to it that they lived longer because they had less of that.
Mm-hmm.
But now we face that physical death quicker,
Mm-hmm.
and we see the effects of it,
Right.
and we see it even faster than Adam and Eve saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And as the world becomes more corrupt and further distanced from God, we will continue to see that,
Mm-hmm.
and it will continue to grow.
And something that sort of parallels to that is all how we over medicate ourselves and our over dependence on medication, in that
Yeah.
we're seeing, and this isn't some wacko conspiracy theory. This is something well established in the medical world, that we are creating superbugs that are
Yeah.
that are medicine and vaccine resistant.
Yeah.
And because we're not allowing our bodies to, from an early age, we're not allowing ourselves to be exposed to things that build our immune system. When I
Right.
was very, very young, my pediatrician apparently told my mom that kids should eat a pound of dirt a day.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, she didn't mean that.
Yeah.
What she meant was we need to be exposed to things, so our immune systems get exposed to that and then become strong.
Yeah.
But now we're medicating ourselves so much. There's all these, I just said the word vaccinations,
Mm-hmm.
that we're making our bodies weaker. So now these new diseases that come out,
Yeah.
we are less able to fight them naturally,
Mm-hmm.
and so we just have to keep adding medication on top of medication on top of medication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, interesting fact. Let me preface this by saying I am not a doctor. Do not follow, my advice or my thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to share my experience personally. And, so I grew up, I was born with asthma. I've had asthma my entire life, and so, asthma medicine got really expensive several years back.
Mm-hmm.
And I started taking a medication, I think when it first came out. I don't remember how long it's been, more than 10 years. But I started taking a medication called Advair.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to be, like, oh, when this is available and you can start taking this is going to be like a fix-all for your asthma.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came out, the doctors immediately gave it to me. Well, the problem with Advair was, in the beginning, in order for me to get it, it was more than $500 every month. So, we didn't have that kind of money, but we had to figure it out. So
Mm-hmm.
we got the medicine, and for a while it worked. We were able to afford it for a little bit, and we could take care of it. I got the medicine, I was on it, and my asthma did pretty well while
Mhm.
taking Advair. Well, as time went on, just our financial situation had changed, and I didn't have insurance and wasn't able to get the medication, and so I ended up starting to have to pay that $500 and something
Mhm.
every month out of pocket if I wanted it. Well, my doctors, they prescribe that medicine at 2 doses per day. So you do it once in the morning, once at night, and you're
Mhm.
supposed to be golden. Well, I got to a situation where I couldn't afford to go buy it every month. I had to buy it like every other month, every 2 months.
Mhm.
So I lowered my dose. I lowered my dose down to once a day. And I'm like, well, I'll just take it once a day and see how that works, see if I can
Mhm.
manage it. Well, I started doing that. And now I take that medicine like 3 times a week, you know, but now, after a couple of years, I don't really have to take the medicine.
To get it all.
Yeah, I don't have to take it at all. I don't even take allergy meds anymore, really. I used to take allergy meds like every day. I mean,
Mhm.
Zyrtec and all the stuff, I used to take it every single day. But I've stopped putting that stuff in my body on a regular basis, and my body does not need it. It does not require it. So I don't know what the correlation is
Right.
there necessarily, except for when I was putting it in my body craved it and wanted it, and I had to have
Mhm.
it. And now that it's not in my body regularly, I don't need it.
Mhm.
Like I asked my wife the other day, I said, "Do you think it's possible that somebody lied to me somewhere down the line and said I had asthma and I never did?"
I think it's possible because you say that, and I once read a book. I think it was the Ragamuffin Gospel is what it's called.
Yeah,
But the author had asthma, and he was talking about how there is some thought that asthma may be partial psychosomatic.
yeah,
Because he told him again, this is just one man's experience. When he went somewhere to speak, and there was this big bouquet, I believe it was roses in front of the platform, and before the whole event started, when he was up there preparing, it started to affect him with these
yeah,
flowers, and he tells them, guys, we're gonna have to take these flowers down, and they tell him those flowers are fake, they
yeah,
weren't even
yeah.
real,
They weren't even real
but
flowers.
it's all mind over matter. He saw the flowers. He
Yeah,
believes, he knows he has asthma, so his body created, literally manifested the symptoms of asthma
yeah.
because he just assumed that they were real
He
flowers.
assumed that it was real, and that's what
Mhm.
he had going on. Uh, so yeah, we're way off topic at this moment. However, I'll share this fact with you, my personal experience. I have always been allergic to cats and dogs growing up.
Mhm.
And so that was part of the thing. I took allergy meds and I took asthma meds, and I've been hospitalized because of asthma.
Mhm.
And now I have 2 dogs. We're actually babysitting a third one right now. We just went to Florida on vacation, and my brother-in-law has a bunch of cats. Like they just have cats.
Mhm.
And I held a cat.
Mhm.
They had a kitten that was kind of cute. I don't really like cats. I think they're the devil.
All kittens are cute.
But the kitten just kind of got to me. And so I was like, man, quit putting that thing away. Bring that cat out here. Let me do an experiment. And so I bring this cat out. I'll have to post this picture on our podcast. But they bring this cat out, and he just sets it next to me, and he's like, well, just warm up to it, see if you have any reactions. And I picked the cat up,
Mhm.
and I literally grabbed the cat like this and rubbed my face all on its fur. You just go for gold, and nothing happened. I didn't have a single allergic reaction at all.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I've always been allergic. Like I have been hospitalized from being in rooms with cats.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
So should we get back on topic?
we should get back on topic because we are way off base right now. But
All right. So Adam and Eve have sinned. So we get into a little bit of the aftermath. Adam names his wife Eve because she's the mother of all living, and I've always wondered if that has any correlation to like Christmas Eve. Any day before a holiday, it's the name of the holiday Eve.
yeah,
I don't know if there's a connection there, but
I have no idea. I
Right.
haven't thought about it really.
right. And God then though provides clothing so that they don't have the leaves anymore, and he takes garments of skin and clothes them. This suggests that this would be the very first death. And not only just the very first death, but the very first death that was required for covering sin.
Yeah.
We have, I doubt that God, although God could have just simply, created skin out of nothing,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that's what happened. There's not really any indication
Right. Right.
that's the case. And, furthermore, what, the ultimate consequence for Adam and Eve was death, and they get banished from the garden. Where, had they, God says they take from the fruit of life, then they'll live forever. And as a just God, He can't allow sin to go unpunished, and that was part of their punishment was, death.
Yeah.
Because that's the wages of sin is death. When they sin, they, it's a kind of a weird way to put it, but they earn death.
Yeah.
That's what we all deserve from our very first sin. And
Mm-hmm.
that you can have that discussion whether or not there's a age of accountability.
Yeah.
I think there is. I mean, I can't really point to anything in Scripture that says it.
Yeah.
And really, I don't know. It may be more proper to say a development of accountability.
Yeah, because it's more along the lines of understanding.
Right.
But at the same time, like the understanding of accountability or the whatever, you don't ever get to that prior to sinning. Like you sin prior to ever understanding that you're sinning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Age of accountability. I don't know what that. I guess people have tried to label it like 12 or 13 years old would be an age of accountability. But would it be different for every kid in every situation? Meaning, like when a kid starts to understand that lying is wrong, you're now accountable to lying. When a kid starts to understand that, whatever the sin is wrong, now you're accountable for that. And could you come to an understanding of each one of those things at different ages or different points of life?
Mm-hmm.
So can I come to an understanding at 5 years old that lying is wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you could. Could I come to an understanding at 10 years old that whatever is wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that in my house, if you know you're doing wrong and you still do it, there's still punishment.
Right. I would say at that point, it just comes to where when sin is sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were, the two of us were asked here, a few weeks ago, even more weeks ago by the time this airs, should a child have to defend their faith?
Yeah.
And I think we are both kind of the opinion that, Scripture says we should be able to give a reason for the hopes that resides in us. We actually be prepared to
give an account.
Yes, give an account to defend the faith.
Yeah.
And so we kind of, I would say it's kind of age dependent, and it's the most general question is most general answer is I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Children should be able to do that. Maybe not to an adult.
Yeah, or and it's going to look different. I mean, my 7-year-old, if you ask her to give an account of her faith, tell me about Jesus. It's going to look a whole lot different than what my 13-year-old's going to say.
And asking a 13-year-old is going to look different than asking one of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's going to be a limit to their knowledge.
Yeah. Or asking a guy like me and asking a theologian.
Right.
Like you're going to get different components, different aspects.
Or like for the two of us, you might get an answer different as slightly different answer from, I come from more of an apologetic view, whereas you're coming from more of a pastoral view.
Yeah.
So I may go more into the details on, the Hebrew and history, stuff like that. And, if a child is old enough that if you believe your child to be understanding enough to get baptized, then
Yeah.
that should mean they're also understanding enough to be able to defend their faith.
Yeah, so it's like my daughter, 7 years old. You know,
Mhm.
we've been talking about water baptism and what that might look like for her, and we've not made a decision as parents yet to allow her to be baptized, even though she's kind of questioning it.
Mhm.
And the reason that we haven't made that decision yet is because we're waiting for her to be able to explain to us the necessity or the need for baptism.
Mhm.
We want her to understand water baptism and salvation, at her own level, but without prompting. We don't want it to be, that we're prompting her for the correct answers. We want her to understand those and be able to state that for herself before we say, okay, yep, let's go get baptized.
Mhm.
Because if she can tell us what it means to be saved without me prompting her, in the right direction, she's probably ready for baptism.
Mhm.
But if I have to continually go, well, here's this, think of that, and
Mhm.
maybe she's not quite ready yet.
If it's more you leading her
Yes. Yeah.
than her, volunteering it or coming up with it
Yeah.
on her own.
Like I would rather wait till she's 12 years old and makes a decision for her own faith than have her do it at 7 and she's going to feel like she wants to redo it later in life.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Landing the plane here. So these, although it's scripture, so it's all connected. These first 3 episodes, the Bible, creation, and the fall, is really the foundation for the entire rest of the series.
Yeah.
It's kind of full circle with these first 3 episodes. And let's see which one is next on the docket. Episode 4. All right, talk about Jesus.
Yeah. And that's good because in this conversation of the fall, I think that one of the most important things is to understand that all men, all women, all human life, is living an experience based on the sin that has entered the world. Like everything that we do comes with a perspective of sin.
Mm-hmm.
So right or wrong, Christian or not Christian, it rains on the just the same as the unjust. Like we are all living under the punishment of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And the full ultimate punishment of sin, unbroken relationship with God, is going to be eternal separation from God.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all living in that right now. We're all feeling it. We're all feeling the effects of it.
We are all under a certain degree of punishment.
Yeah.
We're all in a certain degree under God's wrath.
Yeah.
Once this life is over, we will either no longer be under His wrath, or we will be in the full, undiluted wrath of God.
Yeah, that would be scary.
Because if we will fast forward a little bit to the crucifixion was the God's wrath poured onto the Son of God.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we differ on this or not, but you say like eternal separation of God. I'm of the opinion hell is not the eternal separation from God; it's the fullness of His wrath.
Yeah. So I think we probably see it the same way, even with it being worded a little bit different. But like the eternal separation is life without God, like the grace, the mercy.
Gotcha.
It's just full on justice.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It is justice. No one is going to be in hell who doesn't deserve to be there.
Yeah.
There's no innocent person in hell.
Yeah.
Where was because in the 90s, all the music videos and all this was Satan's on his throne in hell and Satan's the one torturing you. Well, no, hell is also
it's hell for Satan.
It's hell for Satan. It's also his punishment. And with it being punishment, the answer to the question of who is punishing you in hell, well, there's only one answer to that question. It's God.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably hard for a lot of people to hear, but it's the truth.
Yeah. because Satan himself is going to be punished. I mean, when he is cast into the lake of fire, like right now, where is Satan? He,
somewhere roaming the earth,
somewhere roaming the earth.
seeking to whom he can
Yeah,
be destroyed.
yeah. Like, and so he's going to be cast into the lake of fire for eternity, just like sinners.
Mm-hmm.
So he will experience the fullness of hell in the same way that everybody else will. Yeah. So, in a positive note, we're not going to leave it like this. The fall of man is a tough conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that has to be had, because in order to understand the fullness of salvation and the fullness of the grace and the mercy of God,
mm-hmm.
you have to understand the need for it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's without sin, the gospel has no power.
Yes.
You need equal parts of law and gospel.
Yeah, and that's why the Bible begins with a unbroken relationship with God, and then ends with an unbroken relationship with
mm-hmm.
God. The saints, they're called up, and when we're called up, we escape from the sinful nature, the sinful world, and we are separated from sin and placed into eternity with God,
mm-hmm.
just like it was intended back in the Garden of Eden. Yeah. I can't wait for that day.
Mm-hmm. Right? And, you hear about the Christians that when they get to the end of their life and whether they're in hospice or they're just, it sounds kind of, weird to say, but they're just old and, and they're ready. Mm-hmm. They're like, not in a suicidal way.
Yeah.
They're ready to go home. They're ready to see God. They're done with this world, because for those people, I want to get to that point where I never want to be like, man, my life is pretty good here. No, this is nothing compared to what heaven's going to be like.
Yeah.
And I want to be to that point where I'm ready to go. And I do find myself where I'm like, when I see the way the world is, I'm like, come back, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's going to be in His perfect timing, but
yeah. Well, I definitely feel that way at times. Where I'm like, Lord, just come back. I mean, the older I get, the more grumpy old man I kind of become, where I want to be separated from people. I don't really feel the need to be around a bunch of people anymore. I've gotten to a place where I just want to move out of the woods and be by myself. But that's just kind of where I've come to just over time. I don't need to be in the circles. I don't want to be with all the people. I don't need the crowds. I don't need people giving me attaboys or looking, for whatever. I've gotten to a place where I kind of want to be separated, and I'm okay if the Lord comes back today. But on the other hand, there are things in my life that I'm like, gosh, I would love to get to the end of this thing.
mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by get to the end of it, I would like to have the full experience of, raising my children to where they become adults, and I get to watch them, grow into men and women of God, where my son, maybe he becomes a pastor, maybe he becomes a teacher, maybe, whatever it is that he's doing, but whatever he's doing it for the Lord. And, to me, that's like the end goal, or my daughter, I get to walk her down the aisle and give her away, and whoever her husband is gets to pick up the responsibilities that I will be laying down of protecting her and taking care of her, and loving her. He gets to pick up those responsibilities and carry that through life. Like there's the part of me where I'm like, just get me out of the woods, Lord, and come back tomorrow.
Right.
And then there's the other part of me that's like, Lord, can you just hold off? Can you just give me a little bit more time? Because I want to see what my kids do. I want to see what the Lord can do in the next 5 years. I want to see what He can do in the next 10 years. Are we going to get 10 or 15 more years down the road and look at the world and go, wow, God has done some amazing things. Like, I know that there's like the hyper grace, or not the hyper grace, but the hyper charismatic churches that talk about like the new revivals and stuff. but at the same
The
time,
new revivals that are just around the corner but never come.
just around the corner but never show up. Yeah, but at the same time, like, what would it really look like if God really got a hold of people in America?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what kind of changes could we have if everybody went to a church like mine? You know, this is partiality there, but you know, but you know, see what I'm saying? Like there's some things that I'm really excited, and I hope to see some great positive stuff come out of this life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then there's some moments where I'm like, I don't know that that's going to happen.
Well, and you know that, you know, whatever, yeah, like I hope, you know, I hope to grow to an old age, but, you know, if I don't because the Lord calls me home or the rapture happens, then I'm not going to regret. I'm not going to be like, oh man, I'm in the presence of God.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get to see.
Shucks.
You're not going to be like, I didn't, you know, as much as I love being here, like, yeah, you want to be able to walk your daughter down the aisle, but
Yeah.
but ultimately, you're not going to be disappointed that you didn't get to do that if you're in the presence of God.
You didn't even think about it.
Right.
Like, so in heaven is eternal separation from the sin man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here on earth, as a sinful man, our sinful selves think about the earthly life, the
Mhm.
stuff that in light of eternity doesn't matter. You know, so in light of eternity, it doesn't matter if I walk my daughter down the aisle. I'll never think about it again in heaven.
Nope.
It doesn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in light of eternity, to think that, like, I want to be here more than I want to be there is a sinful, broken nature thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the perfective, you know, or perfected will of God in my life that's thinking that. That's selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
That's me being selfish, going, I'll stay away from God just a little bit longer.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, sometimes when I'm hiking, though, I'm like, you know, God, just send a bear. You know,
Yeah.
Drop a rock on me, you know, whatever gets me off this mountain. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm out in the woods, I'm like, the car's so far away, Lord.
Right.
Rapture would be good right now.
I tell you what, when you're hiking and you're somewhere where at the end of the hike, it's near a well-traveled road, the sound of cars
Mhm.
is the most beautiful sound in the world. Because you know you're almost done.
You're almost done. You're almost back.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah.
It has been.
A couple of sidebars there, but it's been
Couple of
good.
sidebars. We probably went a little bit longer than we had planned, but
Yeah.
it's been. But you know, I don't think we wasted any time.
No. I enjoyed this one.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
yeah.
So next time we're talking about Jesus. And so until then, I'm Jeffrey.
And I'm John.
Stay cross-eyed.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got nothing. I got ice cream, milkshakes on the brain, but
Yeah. See, I feel like if I go get ice cream now, Catherine will be like, "Well, why didn't you bring me?"
yeah,
So maybe I'll go home and we can
coordinate.
coordinate. That's the word I was looking for.
Or you just tell her, you know, like, hey man, sometimes you just aren't included in life. That's okay. And that's a good way to die.